What's up, everybody? Welcome to another exciting edition of the Two Buck Sports Podcast, coming to you from our regularly scheduled night. Uncle Buck, are the skies clear down there in North Mississippi?
Yeah, man, it is a little overcast, but 52 degrees. You wear a short sleeve shirt, feel good outside. I don't want to jinx it, but tonight looks to be pretty good. Although, given my last month, I guess I'm not placing any bets on having good weather for any stretch of time.
Absolutely. I've been enjoying some sunshine and beautiful weather out here at the beach. I've got some friends coming in town in a little over a month for a golf weekend, and they were bemoaning the fact that they have several inches of snow in Boston right now. I'm like, just can't relate, man. It's sunny and 63 here.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's no bad weather that does not scare me anymore. So
I'm sure.
I've had to work through snow. I've had to work through a tornado, hot weather, cold weather. It doesn't matter. So
Well,
just part of being a Power Ranger, I guess.
That's it, man. I just know that if I know it's not here, but if my power ever goes out, I'm like, you know what? Drew's got this. I'm not worried.
Yeah, I'll get it to you quick.
All right, Drew. We normally start our nights off with a draft, and we've been enjoying that, doing different topics from what we'd buy if we won the lottery, would we survive the zombie apocalypse, favorite sport, different things that we've drafted. And tonight's is going to be very similar, but we've had a rough few days as fans of the Memphis Grizzlies. For those of you keeping up at home, Ja Morant has had better weekends than the one he had.
Rusty, you could not have put it more pleasantly. I think Ja Morant woke up Sunday or Saturday afternoon sometime in a haze to find that his phone has exploded with notifications because he decided to flash a handgun in his own personal Instagram live channel. And
right on the heels of what we reported last week, with already some lawsuits about guns in his waistband, his team pointing guns allegedly at the Indiana Pacers staff. Like, there's been some lead up to this. It's not just waving a gun; it's waving a gun and the backstory.
Right. So we're gonna get into all of Ja Morant's antics after we get through with our draft. But we did get to thinking, and so we've been in a funk, because Ja, resulting from this, has decided to take a little bit of time away to fix his issues, and it's got us thinking about what our worst sports heartbreaks were, because we're mourning the season. We are currently mourning the number 2 seed now since we lost that last night.
Yep.
And so we are going to go draft style. We're going to do this as a snake draft. However, the only team that Rusty and I cross over on are the Grizzlies. And so there's not much gamemanship going on in this draft. We're just going to tell everybody what our top 5 worst sports heartbreaks are.
Yeah. Yeah, and Drew, you and I are fans of colleges and some professional franchises that are known for some heartbreaking losses and heartbreaking seasons. So this was a very easy list for me to come up with. It took me all of about, 48 seconds to know what my 5 were.
Yeah, I told Rusty before we started the podcast, I said, let me just jot these down real quick. And I think I got to like 8 in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I've often said that the College World Series has not been more well-deserved for a fan base than Ole Miss fan base, who has nothing to celebrate since the 1960s.
Yeah, so, man. We didn't know what we were being either born into or choosing or going to school with. Like, I could have never known we were wee tots, but here we are. And I feel like a lot of sports fans can say that outside of some certain big markets, or if you're a bandwagon fan. And we've taken a lot of lumps over the years, and we're going to commiserate over those over the next few minutes.
Yeah. So I've got the first pick of the draft, and I will, I told you that I had a bunch of different ideas that came to mind immediately, but there's always one that was like, I still feel it in my gut. And after this game, my dad looked at me as we were in the stands, and he said, "Son, I apologize. I should have raised you an Alabama fan." And that happened in 2015 when Ole Miss played Arkansas in the Vaught Hemingway Stadium. And as the game wound down, Arkansas in desperation threw a pass to the sideline to Hunter Henry, who with nothing else to do, chucked it over his head bounced off the ground, and Alex Collins picked it up and ran it to the 5-yard line and ultimately won the game against Ole Miss. And the reason why this one hurts so bad, you have heartbreaks. I can go on and on for days about how games hurt. But what really takes them over the top and what will make this list is it's make or break a whole season. Like, this is it. This is culminated up to this. If I told you in 2015 that Ole Miss beats Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, then I think they're in the West. There's no way that you lose any more games. Like, there's no way you're not representing the West for your first ever SEC championship game appearance. But no, Hunter Henry throws that backwards lateral 25 yards on 4th and 25, and it crumbles right in our lap. And if you remember that season, the only other loss we had in the SEC was against Florida, Will Greer, who the Monday after they beat us tested positive for steroids and was banned for the season. And so that is the culmination. Like, that is the best example I have for what an Ole Miss fan was like up until January the 26th, 2022, when we won the College World Series. It was always, the running joke was, we are Ole Miss. It wasn't a joke. It was, we are Ole Miss. WAOM. You feel it in your gut. You know when it's coming. It's the boogeyman that's peeking around the corner. Anytime you have the slightest bit of hope, as we learned in Ted Lasso, it's the hope that kills you,
Yep.
And just as soon as you get that hope, the boogeyman comes and just stabs you straight in the back and robs you blind. And that's what 4th and 25 was in a nutshell. It was, we are Ole Miss. We're not allowed to have nice things. Our best season since the 60s has been robbed by a blind lateral return to the 2-yard line in overtime.
Yeah. I feel that, man, as a fan of a Mississippi college as well, we can commiserate on a lot of those things. Maybe not quite in such an unlucky fashion, but I'm going to back it up 1 year prior for my number one heartbreak. I was in Starkville when Mississippi State played Auburn, and the winner of that game, pretty well decided, was going to be the first ever number one team, in the inaugural college football playoff poll. And we beat them. We beat Auburn to become the number one team in the country. And, Mississippi was on cloud nine, man. I know you've got them. I've got them. We've got the Sports Illustrated covers.
Yeah,
Mississippi Mayhem. State's 1. Ole Miss is 2. I've got it as well.
Ole Miss was 4. But
sure.
Yes.
It was the first time, college football ran through the state of Mississippi. It really did that year. That was our year.
2014. Yeah.
2014. And State won a couple of games as the number one team. And I thought we beat Arkansas. We beat Alcorn State. This is our year. This is the year that State makes an impact. Then November the 15th, 2014 happened. Drew, I was at State. I was down there at the field the last time Mississippi State beat Alabama in 2007. Anthony Johnson had a 110-yard pick six. Loudest I have ever heard Davis Wade. Coach Kroom just had an emotional meltdown after the game. It was a phenomenal scene. We've not beat Alabama since, and that did not happen on November the 15th, 2014. Mississippi State came in as the number one team in the country, played Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium, got our butt kicked for 3.5 quarters, made a roaring comeback in the fourth quarter to lose 25-20. I knew we were in trouble in the opening kickoff. Alabama kind of hit us in the mouth. We hung with them for a little bit, and then about halfway through the first quarter, Alabama registered a safety, and I thought, this ain't good. This is not good.
When plays like that happen, a safety or a missed extra point, that will be the margin you lose by.
Especially against Alabama.
Yeah.
You don't beat Alabama giving up safeties and missing extra points. And we lost 25-20. We lost by 5. We scored a touchdown to pull it to 25-20 with 15 seconds to go. And the worst part is I had hope. Like Ted Lasso said, man, hope kills you because
the hope that kills you.
The onside kick hopped up and for about 0.9 seconds was just fluttering in the air, surrounded by maroon jerseys, and it was gobbled up by the one Alabama player standing there, and Alabama won. The rest is history. Lost in Oxford to Ole Miss, and then Georgia Tech rushed for a cool 496 yards on us in the Orange Bowl and just beat the crap out of us with that little trap.
So what I remember about that season, like you said, on the same week, October 4th, 2014, Ole Miss beat Alabama in Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
That same night, they commemorated the Ice Bowl between Mississippi State and Texas A&M.
Right.
And Mississippi State won. And so that next issue of Sports Illustrated was the Mississippi Mayhem issue.
Yeah.
Ole Miss goes on to lose to Memphis, I believe. And they enter the polls at 4, Mississippi State at 1 in the first ever college football playoff committee poll.
Yep. We beat Auburn. We beat Auburn at home. Then we won at Kentucky, home against Arkansas, beat UT Martin, won 3 games. And then we lost to Alabama and then beat Vandy, but then lost to Ole Miss and Georgia Tech to finish out that year.
And that's what I was getting at, is because you were 9-0, and that was the We Believe year, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was it, man.
Yeah. That was the Mississippi State, Alabama coming to town. We believe everything. It was on everything. That
was our year, man. Because we had won at LSU for the first time since like 1984. Earlier that year, Dak rushed for 250, including that big 60-yarder right down the middle of LSU's freaking football field, man. And that was his
coming out party.
I was in Orange Beach, Alabama, having a pure D meltdown when that happened.
And that's the thing as Ole Miss fans we remember, is that you finished the year 10-2 because Ole Miss got in the way. That was the year Dak pooped his pants. If y'all don't know, Dak pooped his pants during that game. He got hit in the stomach. He stayed on the ground for a minute. He limped to the locker room and came out with a new pair of pants. You tell me. So
it was muddy. It was muddy.
All right.
Anyway, so 2014 Mississippi State Bama is my first one. Want to get the college out of the way because I'm a professional sports fan, but college obviously matters. And there's a million Mississippi State games where we flubbed, and I sat through the 6-3 loss at Auburn, losing out on the Cam Newton sweepstakes could be in there. But I'm going to say my next one as a Chicago Cubs fan is kind of an obvious one.
Oh, Bartman.
It was 2003, and I remember it like it was yesterday. In the moment, I lost my mind. Like, Moises Alou looked like he was finna snag that ball.
Mark Pryor was no chance.
I'm getting there. Hold your horses. I'm getting there. I was 16 in 2003 and thought, man, this is it. Like, it was Bartman's fault. Like, that's the only way we lost that game. Now, as a mature adult and watching the film, that ball was foul. I don't think Alou was going to catch it. It was a good foot and a half away. Bartman kind of leaned out but came back to catch the ball. And plus, Mark Pryor had a meltdown. Lost that game. That was game 6. It wasn't even game 7. It was game 6. Still had one more game that we could have won to beat the Florida Marlins with a young Miggy Cabrera and a loaded roster.
Edgar Renteria, Gary Sheffield.
Juan Pierre, like a great team. And we just couldn't do it. Lost game 6. And then we gave up 5 runs. And that was in the 7th inning. And then we gave up 5 runs to close out the game. Lost game 7. The Marlins ended up winning the World Series. So for the young Cubs fan that I was, that was that was a big deal, man. I didn't know what I was signing up for becoming a Cubs fan. And I thought, now I can blame it all on this one dude. When the reality was, Alou wasn't going to catch that ball anyway.
Yeah, what's often forgot about that game was that the Cubs were up multiple runs. That play.
It was 3-0 at that point. It was 3-0.
And then they ended up, and I believe it was 2 outs when that ball was, and then they ended up giving up 5 runs in that inning. Like, they completely just rattled them to the core. It reminds me a lot because it reminded me a lot of that 2018 Arkansas College World Series against Florida State, where they botched that. They had the 3rd out right there to be caught, and they dropped it, and it fell foul
territory.
And then they give up back-to-back hits.
Yeah.
Before you know it, Oregon State walks it off and then beats them in a winner-take-all game 3.
because the very next pitch is where the wheels really started coming off. Mark Pryor threw the ball about 62 feet, and it just hit and skipped, ricocheted over, and the first run scored to make it 3-1. And it was over from there, man. And just a utter meltdown. Cubs lost 5-3, got smacked in Game 7. That was it, man. At that point too, the Cubs were winning 3-2, and so that tied up the series, ultimately letting the Marlins win and then go on and win the World Series. So for me, as a 16-year-old kid, I still remember the sting of that. That still gets me in my stomach, even though as an adult, I know it wasn't his fault.
Right. And for me, around the same age, 2003 is when I was 11. And it was my first experience with Ole Miss, being good. My parents started buying season tickets to Ole Miss football games when Eli was a redshirt sophomore. It was his first year as a starter. And so that was in 2001. And so 2003 gets here. Eli's a redshirt senior. Everybody knows he's going to be the number one pick in the draft. His team around him's terrible, but Eli is the savior. I mean, genuinely, he was billed to be the savior, and he was. And we went in to, we were tied. I'm not going to get bogged down in trying to remember details for the sake of a podcast. We were playing LSU at home. The winner goes to Atlanta. Again, there's your shot for your first ever SEC championship game. And so Ole Miss is driving. Eli's driving. The clock's winding down. It's 4th down. They're at about the 20-yard line of LSU, and a touchdown ties it or wins it. I can't remember the final score. Anyways, because it didn't matter. Because what happened is Eli was under center, and as he takes the snap, the center, either Eli was slow or the center was too fast. Doug Buckles, the center, steps on Eli's foot, and he goes down, and the game is over. What was once cheering and hopeful and, oh my goodness, we can do it, we can do it, we can do it. We have faith. Eli's going to win the Heisman. Everything is good. I wouldn't want to be in any other spot than what we're at right now. In 1 second, it was over. And there went the SEC. And it still bugs me because we have a banner hanging in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium that says SEC West Champions from 2003. It was a shared title with LSU, and they went to Atlanta. I just want to take it down. We're not SEC West champions if you don't go to Atlanta.
It's like the Arkansas participation ring tweet right before college baseball season. Like, why are you tweeting out your participation ring when you got there and you dropped the ball?
And,
or in your case, got stepped on.
is I'm sure they did it because they can't put a banner up for anything else since 1960 something when they, back when they used to share titles and there was no championship game. You've got 3 of those hanging up, and then past that, all you've got is the 2003 SEC West co-champions banner. I was like, nah. So you don't want to feel like you haven't done anything well for 70 years, but you haven't done anything well enough to get a banner, So, so that was my next one. That's my 2 Ole Miss ones. If we go into honorable mentions later, I can keep going.
Yeah.
The next one, I'm going to go pro with this one, and it's the only one that I thought me and Rusty may compete over. And it is the Grizzlies in the divisional round of the NBA playoffs, Game 6 against Oklahoma City.
Oh, you stole it, you son of a gun.
When tempers got a little hot and Zach Randolph punched our now beloved Steven Adams and got suspended for Game 7. And that was a team that would have won it all. I believe it with all my heart. They would have beaten that who was it that went out of the West?
The Mavericks.
Dallas. The Dallas was a Cinderella story that made it out of the West and ended up beating the Heat. It was the first year of the Heat with the Heatles with Bron, Wade, and Bosh. The Grizzlies would have won that championship if Zebo doesn't get ejected. Doesn't get suspended for Game 7.
True. This is the one, man. I remember right where I was standing when that went down. Um, and like it really wasn't even a hit. LeBron got mugged worse that same night, and there was nothing that happened to the guy that hit LeBron. Zebo hit our now like back then. For those of you who hadn't been following the Grizz for a long time, Steven Adams is our lug, but he hadn't always been our lug. He used to be OKC's lug, who we didn't like at the time because he's just a punk kid getting in Zebo's face. Zebo kind of gives him a little one of these. But the reason that he got ejected and suspended for Game 7, that was the real MVP year. And Adam Silver and like the NBA, like I'm not a big like sports or rig fan, so don't come at me. I'm not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, but Adam Silver was not going to stand for his league MVP getting bounced in the first round by the Memphis Grizzlies in a small market like that. Not when you've got a all-world talent like Kevin Durant. That's why Zebo got suspended, because he was mauling Kendrick Perkins. That was the same series where Zebo said, I ain't worried about Perk. I've been mugging him since 16-year-old AAU. That was the we don't bluff series. Like that was the series that like our coming out party, and Adam Silver deflated that. Anyway,
yeah, I'm not going to go that far
Salty about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as far as to say it was a conspiracy. You know, it's not a frozen envelope kind of situation for me. I do believe that it looked worse than it did because Zebo came from behind.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
It was kind of
kind of cheap shot him. Like he kind of punked him a little bit because Zebo came from behind Adams as Adams was in front of him running down the court and caught him. And he tried to pass it off as a stumble, but we knew it wasn't. And we also knew what the Grizzlies were known for at that time. They were the physical team. They were the bullies. Where I'm from, bullies get bullied. You know, that was Zebo. Mm-hmm. And when he did that, he had a track record. The Grizzlies had a track record.
Still, and man, it was bootleg is what it was. And it was, to me, it was kind of an obvious play to keep you in, because like, you're right. We had Dallas's number that year. We whipped Dallas every single time we played them there because they didn't have an answer for Zebo. OKC didn't have an answer for Zebo. He was bodying Perk. He was bodying Steven Adams. There was nothing they could do with him. And Chris Bosh didn't stand a chance. Zebo would have worked him in the paint like nobody's business. That was our title year. I am convinced.
Well, anybody who get beat by that Mavericks team in the NBA championship, the Grizzlies would have gotten them. Absolutely. Like if Dallas can beat you, we can beat you.
Absolutely. That was our year. That was our prime. And you stole that one from me, but I've got some more. Trust me, I've got a laundry list of sports heartbreaks that I could go through. That one obviously still stings to this day. All right. So then for my next one, I'm going to stay professional. The year was 2000. Just a couple years removed from actually witnessing my first NFL football game. My all-star baseball coach was the Budweiser delivery man, and gave my family tickets to the Tennessee Titans Jacksonville Jaguars game. It was played in Nashville back at the old
Nissan.
No, it was before Nissan. Oh my gosh, I want to blank. I'll think of it here in a minute. Anyway, it was the original name.
LP Field.
Before that, it started with an A. It was an original field. I'm trying to channel my inner Zach Jones here, but anyway, we had tickets in the corner of the end zone. I got to shake Eddie George and Javon Curse's hands. So I was like, dude, tighten up, man. Let's go. In the year 2000, they played for a Super Bowl against the greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams at the time, and Kurt Warner and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce. And Titans really didn't have a shot. The Rams were a juggernaut on offense with Marshall Faulk and just mauling people left and right. And Kevin Dyson caught a slant across the middle at about the 3-yard line and lunged forward for the end zone and got tackled about a half-yard short. And the greatest show on turf went back-to-back winning Super Bowls after beating the Patriots. They beat the Titans, and the rest is history. Tennessee Titans lost by a half-yard, and I was, again, at that age, 13 years old, devastated. I thought, like, I finally latched on to a winner. I've been a Cubs fan. They're terrible. It's no secret I grew up an Alabama fan. At that time, Alabama was trash. And like any sports teams that were good, Titans made the Super Bowl and lost by less than a friggin' yard. Everybody's seen the image. Kevin Dyson's full arm stretched out. I mean, it was a phenomenal tackle. Just a great form tackle. And the Titans lost by less than a yard.
That is the first Super Bowl that I can remember watching.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
Phenomenal
watching
football game.
Yeah, I remember watching it, and really the only play I remember from the whole thing is that Kevin Dyson play, the 1 yard short play. And I remember thinking, oh, that's close. And then seeing replay, and I was like, no, he missed that by a half a yard, you know?
Mama and I were jumping up. He scored, he scored, he scored. Because she knew I was pulling for the Titans, and we thought he'd scored. And then when they showed the replay, I just remember just folding in the floor like, oh, no, he didn't score.
R.I.P. Air McNair.
Absolutely. So I got back-to-back picks. So Titans 2000 Super Bowl. Drew will throw it way back for this next one.
Well, I mean, you can because you're old as the hills.
What year were you born again?
1992.
You were 4 years old when my next one happened, and I remember this like it was yesterday. My brother and I, shout out to Zach and Patrick Jones, were big wrestling fans growing up. Big wrestling fans. Not the Olympic style, but that wrestling that would come on TV. And in 1996 at WrestleMania 12, they hosted the first ever Iron Man match. And it was a 60-plus minute match between my younger brother Clark's favorite wrestler, Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, and my favorite wrestler when I was growing up, Bret the Hitman Hart.
Okay.
And it was this just epic match of just, I mean, they were coming off the top rope. They were beating each other to a pulp. It was one of the first pay-per-views my parents ever let us buy for a wrestling match like that. We bought some boxing ones later, but that was our first pay-per-view. It was like $50, and we watched it as a family, and it came down to that match. And I thought, there's no way Bret Hart's losing. There's no way. But the writers had Shawn Michaels becoming that superstar.
Everything's a conspiracy with you, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's wrestling, man. It's wrestling. But anyway.
You can't fake that sweet chin music, my man.
Well, the worst part about it, Drew, was he didn't beat him with the sweet chin music. He hit him with the sweet chin music, but Bret Hart got back up, and they kept going. And he beat him with his own move. He put him in a sharpshooter, Bret Hart's finishing move, at about the 64-minute mark, and won the match and broke my 9-year-old heart.
Hey, if you don't start young, can you ever be good at it, you know?
That's it, man. And so mine is a little bit off the beaten path, but Bret Hart losing the Iron Man match in WrestleMania 12, 1996. I still sting. I still get mad about it, man. Especially watching my younger brother gloat around our living room there. We used to live off of Central School Road, had a sunken living room, and he was jumping off that little ledge, running around. I was so mad. Bret Hart lost.
Well, let's see. So my 3 picks so far, I've got 4th and 25, Ole Miss versus Arkansas, and I've got the 2003 matchup between Ole Miss and LSU, and I've got Zebo being ejected for Game 7 of the Western Conference playoffs against Oklahoma City. And so I have covered 2 football and 1 basketball, so I'll go baseball here. And this is probably the most prevailing heartbreak for me in terms of Ole Miss baseball, and that is when we were the number 4 overall national seed going into the college baseball tournament, only to get put out by Tennessee Tech. We were incredible all year long. We could throw it, we could hit it. I genuinely thought that we were the best team, but we had to beat Tennessee Tech twice. They were the 2 seed. They were the best offense in college baseball, came analytically, and then everybody was like, well, can they do it against SEC talent? Well, they did. And what made it worse was that typically when you go, there was a rain out. And so you normally have Saturday and Sunday for a, if necessary, game, because they had to beat us twice in double elimination. Had to beat us twice. And so Saturday gets rained out. So Sunday you have to play a doubleheader. And they just beat the brakes off of us in the first game of the doubleheader. We threw this guy by the name of Sean Johnson. Not the Olympic gymnast, but Sean Johnson. He's a big, tall guy who threw a lot of slow stuff right down the middle of the plate all year long. And the game got so out of hand early that you hoped that they could just flush it and get back on the saddle for the second game. But they didn't. and it was a close one, and we had a shot, and we lost and got put out on our home field to Tennessee Tech with what I thought was our best team ever that I'd ever seen.
Mm.
Tennessee Tech went on to play Texas in the Super Regionals and got beat.
Yeah. That's brutal, man. That's brutal.
Yeah. And that was just the most recent one. I could go on for days about times that we have in Super Regionals for college baseball that we've won the first and lost the two. That's happened like 3 times, I think.
But just because it was Tennessee Tech.
Yeah. So
it's like Mississippi State losing to Maine.
I sat in a regional one time. Ole Miss hosted. They were not a national seed this year, but the first 2 games they played Utah and Tulane and went 0-2 to start the regional and was the first team eliminated. Yeah. Pretty bad.
So, yeah, man. I can relate on that, man. I'm kind of going back and forth. I've got a couple. Let's see. Wait, you got one more, right? You got one more pick.
Yes. All right.
You got one more pick. I'll get to mine in a second. You got one more pick.
Yeah. This one, I'm trying to decide between 2. I'm going to go with the one that most people remember. And it's because it caused a controversy, a stink so high that the NFL overcorrected and made pass interferences reviewable on the next season.
Yep.
And that's when my Saints got beat by the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC playoffs because of the most egregious non-defensive pass interference call anyone has ever seen ever.
Yeah.
It was a 4th down call. They were hitting the guy in the flat, and the safety just demolished him 2 seconds before the ball arrived. There's that famous steal shot as the ball is at the receiver is on the ground with the defensive back standing over him celebrating, and there was no call made. Yeah. And that Saints team, Saints team was incredible.
Yeah. And as a non-Saints fan, I was furious.
And as you know, as growing up a Saints fan, few teams get to cheer for a team that have such cohesiveness for a long period of time. They can stay competitive. You know, it's not Brady and Belichick or Manning and Dungy, but it's probably the next best marriage when it comes to Peyton and Breeze.
Yep.
And you could see Breeze getting old, and you knew your window was closing. And for it to come to such a tragic end like that, which was no fault of your own, was so hard because you knew you only had a couple more chances. Mm-hmm. What sucks even more is the next 2 chances you got was the Minneapolis Miracle, which just missed my list.
Yeah.
And the next year against Minnesota again, where they missed the offensive pass interference call in overtime. Kyle Rudolph shoved the linebacker down in the back of the end zone. Yep. So 3 years in a row when Breeze is that last 2 years even, he's a shell of himself, and the defense carries him. But to have what seemed every single game taken out of your hands, now the Minneapolis Miracle, that was the defensive back's fault. Yeah. But the rest of them were just misses by officiating.
Yeah. That was brutal. I remember watching that and just being like, it's obviously pass interference. And my mom's a Saints fan, and so I was rooting for the Saints in that game because of that. And when they didn't call it, I was flabbergasted, for lack of a better word. Flabbergasted.
There is no better word.
That's it, man. All right, run down your list real quick in totality so our viewers or listeners will know what we got.
All right, I've got 4th and 25, Ole Miss and Arkansas. I've got the Doug Buckles stepping on Eli's foot to end the Ole Miss versus LSU game in 2003. I've got Zebo ejected and suspended for Game 7 of the Western Conference playoffs. Ole Miss crapping the bed against Tennessee Tech in the regionals in baseball, and the missed DPI call on Roby Coleman for the Rams to end our season for the Saints.
And I've got the 2014 Mississippi State-Alabama game. I've got Steve Bartman in 2003, the Titans' 2000 Super Bowl loss to the St. Louis Rams, WrestleMania 12 with Bret Hart losing in a heartbreaker to Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. And I got two I'm kind of back and forth between, Drew. Should I keep it light or go a little more somber?
Hey, man, we're all depressed here. Just do what you want to do.
I'll never forget the day I was laying on my stomach in the living room floor watching with my family the Daytona 500.
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget that.
It was February the 18th, 2001. I'm laying on my stomach. My family is all big Dale Sr. fans. They became Dale Jr. fans because he was part of the family. But as soon as it happened, my mom was like, that's not good. That looked bad. That's not good. But we'd like, oh, he's wrecked like that 1,000 times. Just regular wreck. No big deal. But I'd let the record show that Mama Lee called it the instant it happened. They go around, the race kind of finishes. Everybody's kind of going, doing their thing. And Dale Jr. had his best finish because if you remember, those of you keep watching, that was 2001, a long time ago. Dale Sr. was blocking so that Dale Jr. Could run towards the top. And Michael Waltrip, one of their teammates, won. And Dale Jr. finished second because his dad was blocking for him. And Sterling Marlin hit that rear quarter panel and turned him just enough to where he hit that wall. And this is what caused NASCAR to implement the Hans device to help hold the head steady. They eliminated the open face helmets. And Dale Sr. died that day and was dead by the time that the paramedics got to him there on the track. It happened instantly. He passed away. But a little bit more somber, not necessarily somebody losing, but the day Dale Sr. died, that's like 9/11 for me. Like, I will never forget where I was at when that happened.
Yeah, I'm with you. You mentioned 9/11, which is kind of how I always remember the year Dale Earnhardt died because it was the same year as 2001. You're right. I remember where I was at. We were watching it. I was watching with my dad, who, like your dad and your family, big Dale Sr. fans.
I think everybody in North Mississippi was a Dale Sr. fan.
It was Sunday. It was for Baptist, Southern Baptist folks like we were.
Yeah.
It was the Super Bowl. It was, you get the Super Bowl the week before and you get the Daytona 500 the week after. And I'll never forget going to church that Sunday night, not knowing, because my parents were like, no, we're going. And so when we got into the churches before smartphones, you can't Google it on your way, keep up with it. Mm-hmm. As soon as we got to church, I remember my dad asking around, anybody heard about Dale? And they were like, yeah, he died. And your mom, you said your mom called it. I remember watching that wreck thinking, that's a wreck. That's your run-of-the-mill NASCAR wreck.
Absolutely.
And I was 9, so, I didn't have just a long frame of reference watching NASCAR. But I remember thinking, I know the hood popped up, and that was a little strange. You didn't see that just a whole lot. Sucks for guys like Sterling Marlin, though, because that's what he's known for. And he
got
didn't do anything wrong. It's like Bartman. Bartman did what 99% of people would do when a foul ball is hit to him. You're going to try to catch it, And Sterling Marlin was racing, and he was racing hard at Daytona 500, where you don't have to hit the brakes. You race hard. You're going to go 3 wide. It's the last lap of the race, and everybody's going for the checkered flag.
Yeah.
And if anybody knows, the thing is you could have asked Dale, who has spun out dozens of people on the last lap of a race. He would have said, "Yeah, I would have done the same thing." You know. It just, the end you can't let the end and how it resulted, dissuade the logic, mess up what you would think in the moment. Like the logic made sense. It just sucks it ended how it did.
Right. It is what it is. Rubbin's racing. Dale would say that himself and would not blame Sterling Marlin one bit. And I hate that he received the death threats that he did because he killed an icon, and it was unfortunate. Necessarily didn't kill him. The wreck did.
Right.
You just feel for a guy like that because Sterling Marlin was a great racer. A couple years later, he had another shot to win the Daytona 500, and on a red flag, he got out of his car and he tries to lift his hood to create more aerodynamics across the hood because it was dented and they moved. You can't do that on a red flag, and so he got moved to the back. So just a string of bad luck for him. But I'll never forget where I was at when Dale Sr. died.
Yeah. Just off my list, I wanted to go more mainstream. In 2013, Ole Miss lost to LaSalle in the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament. That was Marshall Henderson year.
Yep.
That was the year Wichita State knocked off the 1 seed Gonzaga in our bracket, and the 3 seed New Mexico got beat by Harvard, the 15 seed or 14 seed. And so you had your path there to your first Sweet 16 in a decade probably, and your first going past the Sweet 16 ever,
legit chance. Yeah. And mine's kind of a similar, it was a perfect storm in 2013 at the College World Series. LSU came in as a juggernaut. They only lost 9 games that whole year. UCLA came out of that side of the bracket. They were 43-17. We were 48-16 coming into that game. Like, we were the better team, and they just absolutely mollywopped us in 2 games. I think it was like 13-3 and then 8-0. We just got skull drugged by this UCLA team that all of a sudden were the New York friggin' Yankees. And that was our first chance at a College World Series title since 1985, and just got destroyed.
Who were those pitchers? I know one was Trevor Bauer. There was another one that was like a Cy Young winner, right?
Yeah, I got it pulled up right here. Yeah, it was, and that's part of it. I mean, they were just incredible.
When you got to win 2 games, if you've got 2 dudes that can throw the ball like that, it's over.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it was, man. They just absolutely crushed us, 3-1, 8-0. But it was just, they were never that close. Just absolutely killed us. Had a chance to win a College World Series that year because, I mean, we beat Oregon State, Indiana, some good teams heading up to that. Beat Oregon State again, the number 3 team in the country. It felt like this was our year, team of destiny. And then the UCLA decided they were going to be otherworldly and just destroy us. So
yeah, that's our list, man. I like our list. Like I said, we only competed for 1 and I win. So we'll post those up. And I know that this may not be a poll that everybody can vote for, because obviously everybody's if you're a Mississippi State fan, you're probably going to go with Rusty's list. If you're an Ole Miss fan, you're going to go with my list. Heartbreak is totally personal, and it's totally dependent on what team you cheer for.
That's it.
And so we've all got it, and we all try to just get through the other side and cling on to the wins when you can get them.
Yeah, that's it, man. So we spent a little time on that, but it was good kind of commiserating over our misery there. Speaking of, man, you want to touch on Ja for a little bit before we get into some college basketball news?
Yeah, I'll touch on Ja. Last week I told you, I said a lot of this stuff is allegations, and it's brought on by poor decisions made and the company you keep. That all changed on Friday night, early Saturday morning, when Ja goes live on his Instagram and he's partying in a club. I don't prefer you to do that, but that happens. What doesn't happen, and what really messed up, is that while partying and videoing himself on Instagram, he pulls out a handgun and rubs it against his face. And then as a fan and somebody who loves Ja, my kids love Ja. Genuinely, when we watch Grizzlies game, that's the only guy they watch. They love Ja. They have Ja jerseys. I live and breathe with Ja Morant and the Grizzlies. To wake up on Saturday morning to that notification was just the worst. Yeah. And unfortunately, what it did is, for me, who defended Ja and said he needs to clean up his circle, but he needs to cool down, but he hasn't really stepped over that line yet. He's erased it. He's lost all benefit of the doubt. The grace is gone. He's getting his beating, and he's taken lashes this week, and deservedly so. It's resulted in him being either voluntarily stepping away or being voluntold to step away.
Probably
for a little
a combination bit.
There. As I always go back to Marshawn Lynch, the great philosopher of our generation. When you are conducting yourself and trying to decide what you're going to do, the 2 most important things, he says, is protect your money, or protect your mentals, and protect your chicken. And so Ja is trying to get his mentals right. Mm-hmm. And for a guy who is just ascending, and Rusty, the tale of it is as old as time. You see these guys who, Ja didn't come from nothing. He wasn't, it's not one of those stories where he was raised by the streets and he's overcoming that. But it is the story of a young kid who doesn't come from a lot, who is a superstar overnight who has $200 million coming to him seemingly overnight. I mean, when you look at your lifespan, if you're talking about in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you go from nothing to not being recruited to $200 million.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the amount of people who are trying to benefit off of you? He said that he does this and he acts out to deal with stress. And some people have kind of said, "Oh, what do you got to be stressed about? You play basketball for a living." No, I'm very much against that. That dude, you can see he's got his boys with him, and those guys he's trying to take care of his folks. He's trying to take care of his boys. He's trying to live up to the hype that people are on him.
Yeah.
He is dealing with this the exact wrong way though. And I hate it for him because honestly, I watched this guy growing up. I mean, I feel like when you're drafted as a 19-year-old kid and you've been with the same organization for this is your 4th year, I feel like you can watch him grow up. And when he came into the league, man, he was timid and shy, and you could tell he come from a good family and he meant business and he worked hard. To see what's happened over the last year with his kind of spiral, like he can't handle it, it's really discouraging. And for Ja, he's missed 2 games. Before the podcast, it came out that he's going to miss at least 4 more.
Yeah.
It's not going to go well for the team, but that's secondary when it comes to your superstar getting right, because it doesn't matter how long this takes for Ja. The Grizzlies and his team will not be right until he is right.
Right. And I think, Drew, a couple comments. I mean, you nailed it, man. You absolutely nailed it. Great job. The 2 things that I have, I'm as big of a proponent of the Second Amendment as they come, but you got to read the room and you got to understand your situation. You're under a microscope because you're already under investigation for a couple gun-related incidents, and you got to read the room and be smarter than that.
Yeah, and even if that's the thing that bothered me, and then I'll get to your. I'm sorry for cutting you off. That's the thing that bothered me is these were accusations that everybody believed to be either rumor or speculation or associated with one of his traveling party.
Right.
Now you go back and look at that, and maybe it's right. That's the thing. You have to reanalyze everything that you thought so far when you're defending him. He put a lot of egg on a lot of faces.
Yeah, because we went to bat for him. On this podcast, we went to bat for him and said that there's probably, some truth to it, but at the same time, like, he's our boy, we're going to defend him. And I think the thing that bothered me the most was Steven Adams stepping up and being the veteran leader that he is. Drew, I know you saw this. They had a closed door meeting with the team, and Steve-O is our veteran leader. Again, he's one of us now. He's no longer the goon of the other team. He's one of us. And allegedly, Steven hosted a meeting with the team and said, "Look, guys, I don't care what you do, but you got to stop going out so late. We got to behave on the road. We got to be able to keep our composure on the road. And this is the time to make a change." And that night, after the closed door meeting where Steve-O stepped up, that night, Ja was filming himself with a friggin' gun, man. Like, it's like it didn't even stick. Like, that was the same night. Just closed door meeting, Steve-O said, "We got to behave and we can't be staying out all night at the club. You've got to get your stuff together." And that's the night that Ja chooses to go Instagram Live with his gun. Again, I'm all for the Second Amendment, carrying a gun, but, like, come on, dude. You're under investigation. Your veteran teammate just said, "Hey, let's get our act together. The season is progressing. We've got to get our stuff together if we're going to be a playoff team." And he pulls that stunt that same night. That's what frustrated me the most.
You're right. And that came out after the fact was very discouraging for me as well. Yeah. Because that's the guy that you do look up. That's the old head, the only old head you have in the locker room. The only guy that's
30, which is crazy.
Right. The oldest guy on the team is younger than me. That sucks. But it just, you're right.
It took the wind out of my sails, man. It really did.
Because it's not that you don't know the consequences. It's that it shows that you don't care.
That's it. That's the biggest thing. Is it felt like somebody was trying to intervene in Ja's life and say, "Look, get your stuff together. Let's get our things together. Let's go win some meaningful basketball games." And Ja heard that. It was one ear and out the other. And that very night, he goes and acts a clown on IG. And I'm done talking about it. The Grizz are in the midst of a terrible funk because of everything's going on. We lost Ja. Dylan was suspended for a game. Where Brandon Clark is done for the year. Big Canada is done. I'm done talking about the Grizz because they make me sad. But
yeah, I'm with you. And if this isn't a wake up call, then I don't know that there will be one.
I don't think there ever will be. I mean, you're losing your money, you're losing your opportunity to play meaningful basketball, and this is it. So,
and I have faith in that, and I do believe that. I believe in the family system that he has and the culture that the Grizzlies have. And I love the fact that the Grizzlies are keeping quiet on it. I know I've seen some people like, why are you not announcing that he is suspended?
They shouldn't be.
Why throw him to the wolves? I mean, a suspension is a suspension.
Yeah.
But when you go out and you, for lack of a better term, you put him out there and make him atone publicly for everything, you don't add any more punishment to it. You don't add any, level of grace to it. You don't allow the guy to feel like he's got anybody in his corner. The Grizzlies are doing the right thing by staying in his corner publicly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, privately, I'm sure there are hard conversations had, and that culture allows a lot of grace for me. They've always done that. They're never going to throw anybody under the bus, especially Ja.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they are letting Ja step away at his own pace, and I'm sure they're allowing him to go seek help and whatever you need, take as much time, but please take some time. You do need to take some time. But we're not calling it a suspension so that that we are in your corner.
It feels good. It feels like they're supporting one of their own, because just like anything, we've all had family members. Drew, you've had family members. I've been that family member where I've screwed up, and I've had people come alongside me and help me through some tough times. That feels good. Even though you're in the wrong, it feels good to have somebody in your corner.
And when you mess up publicly, which we've all done, and for both of us, the other one has at one point come to the other one and said, dude, you screwed up.
Yeah.
You need to know you screwed up. But you know what? I'm still here. And
I love
you. We're still going to be friends. And honestly, just to get personal for a minute, it's the reason why we are such close friends today, because I know that we've got that bond that I don't have with every one of my friends, that I know that I can tell you exactly what you need to straighten up on.
Yeah.
And you can do the same to me.
Yeah.
And there's no hard feelings. And regardless of what we said to each other, we'll be there through it and on the other side as well.
Yeah, not getting into a lot of details, but you wrote me a letter way back in the day that really hit home, and I think we had a beer like that next night, and it was just like, I needed that, man. I needed that, and that was a big pivotal moment in my life, and I hope Ja has somebody writing him a letter, giving him a lecture, something full of hard truth but love at the same time.
Yeah,
for sure.
I said some things in that I wouldn't say in front of my mama
that I needed to hear, man. It was good, man. It was in a time that I needed it for sure. So yeah, I hope Ja's got somebody like that in his corner and all that. But
let's talk about some good things.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Before we do, I need Uncle Buck to come clean on something. I need Uncle Buck to see where he stands today on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year of our Lord 2023. Not even a week ago, because we recorded last Thursday night, Uncle Buck said on this podcast that if the Ole Miss Rebels hired Chris Beard, it would be a good basketball hire, but it would feel icky. Uncle Buck sent me a text message today with some rumblings out of Oxford, and I'm curious, if this hire is made, do you still feel icky about it?
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't know if your position had changed.
No, I mean, I will not go buy a shirt that says Beard Crew or whatever, it seems like every college basketball.
I was a Rick Rowdy football. When I was at Mississippi State, or Rick's Rowdy. It happens.
Yeah. I remember I bought a shirt when Houston Nutt got hired that said, "Welcome to the Nut House," and Freeze had one that said "Freeze Warning," Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. However, so it is the best basketball hire you can make. Can I say that without bringing in the rest of it? Because I know Chris Beard, the person, has baggage, and recent baggage. This isn't like you're going and hiring Patino, who is his baggage is from 8 years ago. That you can say,
not even a year removed,
right? And you're not even a basketball season removed.
No.
And so Yes, of course, I feel icky about it. However, I have become more of a fan of the hire as it goes because,
Well, sure.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, listen, if if I wasn't, I'm not going. I do cheer for laundry, but I don't necessarily cheer for coaches. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Uh,
No,
I
absolutely.
wanted Hugh Freeze fired before Hugh Freeze got fired. You know, for
Hmm.
messing with prostitutes, he had tanked that whole roster before.
Hmm.
The biggest sham of that, to go on a brief tangent of Hugh Freeze getting fired, the biggest sham was he didn't have to coach that team that sucked.
Yeah.
He got ousted. You know,
Yeah.
he more or less got to land on his feet. You
Yeah.
know, as well as one can in that situation. With Beard, it's a different thing. Hugh Freeze was loving women. Chris Beard was hitting them.
Oh my gosh.
And that's not funny. That's not funny. The parallel is funny, I guess, but no, it's never funny when you lay your hands on your girlfriend or wife. Never, never, never. It's not a good thing. He deserved to lose his job. However, when you're talking about basketball, when you're talking about big business, that's what this is. Winning is business. Ole Miss built a state of the art basketball gym not 5 years ago.
A great.
And
The tab pad is
it
incredible.
is absolutely state of the art. It was
Beautiful.
the most perfectly built building that Ole Miss has ever done. The
To
vault,
house a horrendous basketball team.
right? Everything that Ole Miss has built, you can see it's got its flaws. Vaught Hemingway has lots of flaws. I wish that they would bulldoze that and start over. The way that they built an intimate environment, they didn't make it to feel 12,000 people. They made it small and intimate and nice. I mean, they built the perfect gym and they've invested so much money in it. And there's only one way that you can get the experience out of it, and it's winning.
Hmm.
And we can play the morality card, and I've seen it a lot, and it's honestly bothered me when people try to um, poke, you know, it's like, of course, Ole Miss was the one to hire Chris Beard. Ole Miss, they're just a bunch of trash. Like, that's
Ole Mississippi State Twitter, to be fair, that was it. It was Ole Miss gives no you know what's about their public image because they from Lane Kiffin to now this, like it's a big
well,
hire. But anyway,
Lane Kiffin never did anything wrong either. I mean, he was the playboy, you know. I mean,
mhm.
but let's quit acting like college sports is church. Now, you don't want to knowingly hire people who just religiously beat their wives,
Mhm.
but you can't say that Ole Miss is trash while cheering for your own SEC team. Like, if you Ole Miss, their biggest rival is Mississippi State. So if Mississippi State fans want to come in here and say Ole Miss is trash because they hired or are looking to hire Chris Beard, Mississippi State's golden child outside of Dak Prescott right now is one Big Jeff Simmons, who just
Mhm.
blatantly mauled a middle-aged woman in a parking lot.
Allegedly.
I saw the video. That was a
Allegedly.
mall. There was nothing alleged about that. A
Allegedly.
week after signing day, Big Jeff Simmons in a wife beater and some red shorts took a grown woman by her hair and repeatedly punched her while she was on the ground. So, and and you know, Chris Jans was fired from Bowling Green State University
Yeah.
for drunkenly,
Yeah.
uh, you know, groping or
Yeah.
fondling or a woman at an Applebee's. Like, I mean, come
Of
on,
all
let's
places.
be consistent here. Is it about winning or is it about looking good? And
Yeah.
whereas, you know, it sucks, and that's the nasty part about it. It's the reason why I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good that you possibly could hire a coach that has that in his past.
Mhm.
However, if you're going to say this is about basketball, this is about the best coach, no doubt a top 5 coach in basketball, in college basketball, then just let it be about that. Now, you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to meet with him. You've got to meet with his girlfriend, and you've got to get insurances, and it'll be spelled out in the contract. I guarantee you.
Much
You will
like
have
Hugh Freeze
he
has to be
got
off social media, there'll be some kind of stipulations.
right. And if you're looking at that, I mean, Hugh Freeze gets his social media taken away from him because it gets him in a bind. Bruce Pearl is, you know, Auburn hires Bruce Pearl when he's got a show cause.
Hmm.
I mean, Jeffrey Simmons serves a 1-game suspension. I mean, if you're going to say that Chris Beard has not served his punishment, let's be real here. He got fired from Texas. His job is going to be at Ole Miss. And he has lost a considerable amount of money. He has had a public black eye. The Austin Police Department chose not to press charges, so he's out of legal damage, but he has lost a lot of skin, you know? And so Ole Miss, given all that, it is icky. But just don't come at me with the whole morality play.
My turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it is absolutely the right hire. If Chris Jans had taken the job at Wichita State, that they kicked around, yes. I hope that was our first phone call.
Yes,
I would feel icky about it. I would not be, man, this kind of sucks because this is going to be a black eye on our program, but you can't be Tennessee. Remember, Tennessee was going to hire all these football coaches, and they let their fan base come out, and they run out. And again, Greg Schiano has a troubled past and didn't let that hire happen because Tennessee fans are kind of the worst. But anyway, yes, I would feel icky about it, but I would hope that Mississippi State would at least kick those tires and see if he's interested in coming to Starkville, because it's not very often that you're going to be able to pick up you're absolutely right, a top 5 or 6 NCAA basketball coach on the rebound. He's reeling. He's obviously screwed up. He's been crucified in the public's eye. And this is the opportunity for him to come back and really make a statement that, hey, I'm not that guy who got into a physical altercation with my wife. I'm a good dude and a good basketball coach. And he has an opportunity to redeem your program. I made a mistake, but I can redeem your program. You absolutely make that phone call, and you absolutely make that hire.
And we're not talking Ole Miss, because we're not talking about Ole Miss football, because I'll make an argument that Ole Miss football is a 100 times better job than Ole Miss basketball. I don't think that's any debate. Ole Miss football is a top 20 job. I mean, just by being the SEC West alone.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, that's another topic. We'll
agree to disagree.
We'll fight on that one. And Ole Miss basketball is a bad job. Yeah. Chris Beard taking this job is way step down. But as an Ole Miss fan, I've told you when we started this podcast, I don't watch Ole Miss basketball. And it's not because I don't like Ole Miss basketball. It's because Ole Miss basketball is miserable to watch.
Yeah.
It is disgusting. It's the most left-footed, disjointed display of athleticism you've ever seen in your life. And if you want to build a program, you have got to start with a coach. That's how it is in college basketball, because you've got to have somebody who at Ole Miss, you're not, at least not at the jump. Maybe a new coach changes it in a couple of years. Maybe Chris Beard, who's an elite coach, changes it in a couple of years. But from the jump, it is all X's and O's, and it's all who you can get out of the portal. And you need to have somebody that has connections and that can coach them. They can put the team together, that can function as a unit. Kermit never could do that, even though, Buzz Williams said he was the best X's and O's coach in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Chris Beard can do both.
Yeah, absolutely. So he can recruit, he can coach.
If you want to get out of the cellar you're in, you make the hire and you hold your nose while you're doing it. If you want to keep your image clean and hope that maybe in the future you can put together a winning team, then you go hire a mid-major, roll the dice, and see what happens. But that's what it would be.
I think it's absolutely the right hire. I think it's the right move. You at least make him tell you no. You try it out. It's an opportunity for him to revamp his career. He's not going to be there long term. If he comes in, he turns Ole Miss around. You get an Elite 8 or Sweet 16 or maybe even deeper run out of it. You never know what it can turn into. He's going to bounce for a bigger job. But like you've always said, like with Lane Kiffin at the end of last football season, if he's leaving for a better job, it's because you're happy with the results.
Absolutely. And like I said, Ole Miss football, Auburn, I don't believe, is a better job than Ole Miss for Lane Kiffin to go. I think it's a lateral move. But if Chris Beard parlays this Ole Miss job into, I don't know, Florida State when homeboy finally gives it up. Yeah. I can't remember his name. He's the best looking 73-year-old man you'll ever see in your life. But if he finally gives up and you parlay that into Florida State, I mean, my goodness, what?
Yeah.
That means Ole Miss is good. And then when Ole Miss is good, you can recruit a better coach.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it, man. So, yeah, that's all college basketball, except for I do think we need to mention Jim Boeheim announced today that he's not coming back next year after 47 years at Syracuse. His time is up.
Scumbag.
Yeah. I think, Drew, honestly, I think NIL is going to do away with these coaches that stay at places for 30, 40 years. I just don't think you can be competitive for that long. Now you've got, like, the playing field is much more even. I think the days of these long tenured coaches is over, and Jim Boeheim is the latest person stepping out for sure.
Right. So. And, I mean, he is like 95 years old. He goes out the year after Mike Krzyzewski goes out.
Yeah.
And so you're right. I mean, I guess good for him.
Yeah.
He was always kind of a scumbag.
He was, but it's a college basketball legend. I mean, the guy won. You know, he couldn't win the big one, but he was always an Elite Eight team every year. So, yeah. But moving on, since we are a college baseball podcast, let's talk about college baseball, man. How you feeling about your Ole Miss Rebs?
I tell you what, we've talked about a lot of heavy subjects lately. It's nice to talk about a team that's good. You see, last night Ole Miss beat Southern Miss, and it made me think about the time when we beat them just not even 10 months ago in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, to go to the College World Series. Unlike that Super Regional, Southern Miss scored 5 more runs last night than they scored in the whole Super Regional together.
Right.
They scored 5 runs last night. And so Ole Miss beat them handily. It was nice to see that one of the schools in Mississippi did not struggle with the mustard buzzards.
We struggled early, but finished strong.
So Ole Miss,
Southern's a good baseball team. That's a good win for Ole Miss last night. That Southern's going to be a good baseball team this year. They've got deep pitching. That's a good win, man.
It's always tricky on a midweek too, because you're never getting the ace. You know, You're never getting the best.
Their Friday night guy is a stud.
And Ole Miss won all 3 games this weekend in Minnesota in the worst, the most miserable viewing experience I've ever had in my life.
I don't know if 22 fans.
Yeah, I gave you my login. I don't know if you watched any of it on the Big Ten Plus. You had to listen to the god awful announcers because the cameraman could never find the ball.
That's awful.
First pitch of the whole weekend, Jacob Gonzalez rips a double, and they just leave the camera on Jacob Gonzalez as he's rounding the bases, and I have to listen to the announcers to see where it is. And at one point they said, and that should be an error, but we can't confirm or not because this stadium does not have instant replay.
What a disaster.
Yeah. So that was our weekend. Like I said, the biggest win of the week. I mean, we beat Maryland again. We lost the first game in the weekend series last weekend, and then we beat them the remaining 2 games of the series, and then beat them again Friday night in Minnesota. Then you got wins, convincing wins against Minnesota and Nebraska, and I mean the competition wasn't great. Maryland was, the best team in Minnesota that we played.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska's a decent little team this year.
Yeah, Nebraska beat Vandy that weekend on Friday night, I believe. Minnesota, when we beat them, fell to 0-10, which was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And what's even worse for Minnesota is they play in that stadium every home game.
God bless them.
It's just disgusting.
God bless them.
Then a big I got to be in attendance last night as Ole Miss beat Southern Miss, hits 3 home runs in the game, wins 11-5. The kids 12 and under got in free, so along with mine and Haley's 2 season tickets that we own, we were able to take the rest of the children, and we all had a big time.
Nice, man. Good for you. Well, your Mississippi State Bulldogs are sitting at 8-5. Had a rough weekend. I'll say this, man. For as bad as your viewing experience was with the Big Ten Network, I was a fan of the D1 baseball programming.
Oh yeah. The Mississippi State and Ole Miss games were never running concurrently, from what I could tell. So I watched. I was in the office all weekend working storms, and so
I shared my login with you, and it worked.
Yeah, and it worked, and so I always had both games on, and I could run them basically back to back.
Yeah.
D1 baseball did an incredible job.
Incredible job. The color commentators, they knew what they were talking about. They were very sharp, great commentary. The play-by-play was great. The camera angles were good. It was just really, really well done. Replay.
I never thought anything would be worse than flow baseball when we played in that Shriners Classic in Houston a few years ago. It was awful, and I had to pay like $30 for it. I paid $15 for the Big Ten Plus, and those folks in Minnesota, they at one point the last out of the final game, I believe it was the final game. No, it was the Minnesota game because that actually ended up being the closest game. The final out, the camera that's always in center field, that looks over the pitcher into home plate area. The pitcher pitches the ball, and the pitcher's Ole Miss pitcher. It's the bottom of the ninth. The Ole Miss pitcher throws it, and the hitter rips one right up the middle, goes off the pitcher's hip, and the pitcher then goes out of frame, and you hear game over. The camera never moved. It's like they just left it and had to go pee or something. like they went to the beer tent, had to go pee, something.
Yeah.
Just left the camera there. And then I'm just like, well, I hope the pitcher's not injured. I don't know who made the play to first.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah, but that was not the case with D1 out in Frisco. But the baseball was not that great. Lost to Ohio State on Friday night. Lost to Oklahoma on Saturday. Two decent teams, but we were in the Ohio State game. Not really ever in the Oklahoma game. We would score 2, they'd score 4. We'd score 3, they'd score 5, and it was just. I mean, Oklahoma's a good team again. They were in the finals last year. Beat a decent Cal team on Sunday. Really
real quick, Rusty. What did you think about that Oklahoma team? They're different.
Yeah, they're
very old school.
Very old school. They bunted a ton because they know we're struggling a little bit. They got this kid named Carmichael that just absolutely laced the baseball. Every time he came up, I shuddered because he had an RBI just about every friggin' time he came up.
Yeah, when we played them last year, we beat them in the College World Series to win the national championship game. They small balled us to death.
That's what I was about to say. They're very old school. They don't hit they hit a couple home runs, but they get a guy on, they're going to bunt, they're going to hit and run, they're going to double steal. Like they play baseball like baseball's supposed to be played. It was fun to watch, even though they beat us.
I disagree with that, but because as an Ole Miss fan, you were sitting there and looking at our lineup, and it was like, if they're going to work that hard for one run, we're just going to beat the brakes off of them. They could never, they were never letting themselves be able to string anything together because a 1-out single, they're going to bunt.
Yeah, well, they were very active on the base pass. They ran the bases really well, and they beat us 15-9. Got a good win over Cal on Sunday. Hit the ball really well. Bryce Chance is going to be our offense this year. He's a freshman. He's now our starting left fielder. And Dakota Jordan is good. He's really raw. He needs to be the DH, but Bryce Chance needs to play in our lineup until he plays his way out. He is currently sitting at 395. Is he
the guy who hit that tank last night?
No, that was Hunter Hines, who's had a tough year. But if you know anything about the baseball stadium, his position were seeing the Sanderson Center's in right field, and I swear he hit the Sanderson Center. That ball only traveled 443 feet, but it was a moonshot, bomb against Valpo, the fighting Bryce Drews. But Hunter Hines got a big hit last night. Amani Larry continues to do Amani Larry things. Guy's a stud. Colton Ledbetter's top 10 in RBIs this year. Nate Dome has now pitched 12 innings this year. And has 12 strikeouts and has not given up a run. The Ball State transfer is going to step into that closing role really, really nice. Bradley Lofton looked good last night as a freshman pitcher. He had 11 Ks in 6 innings, which is sadly, where here we are in game 11, is the longest outing by a Mississippi State starter all year. He went 6 innings.
It would have been the longest for Ole Miss as well.
Yeah. Struck out 11 over the course of those 6 innings. Just was spinning it, man. I was on a little Twitter exchange last night. I know you're going to unfollow me because of all my Mississippi State baseball tweets, but JT Ginn vibes coming off the mound, strutting after a strikeout. Guy's got a lot of confidence and got some good stuff. He can absolutely spin it.
It's funny you say JT Ginn because you know what Ole Miss's starting pitcher's name is that started last night? JT Quinn.
How about that?
It has thrown me off all year, and I'm like, man, I hope he don't turn out to be JT Ginn because he was a bust.
Well, he got hurt. But anyway, good win against Valpo last night. Finally took advantage of the run rule and won 12-2 last night. Got Lipscomb this weekend as a little bit of a tune-up. Then we go to Biloxi to play Nichols in Louisiana. The Raging Cajuns, 2 Louisiana teams before conference play starts on the 17th at Kentucky. I think I've said all along our season's going to live and die by pitching. We're going to score a ton of runs, but we might get out. We're going to need them because it might be 18-15 every game. But our freshman Gerangelo had a phenomenal outing Friday night against Ohio State. He played really well as our bullpen that let us down. We were in that game as long as Gerangelo was pitching. Our season is going to be carried by our young pitchers, which is going to be scary for the SEC in a couple of years. But a couple tune games for conference play, and I like what I'm seeing. I'm seeing signs of offense. Ross Highfall needs to be our everyday catcher. Bryce Chance needs to be our everyday left fielder. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Ole Miss goes back home, stays at home rather, this weekend to play another Big Ten team at home with Purdue. It's really nice to be able to play Power 5 teams in a non-conference.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this before. I love the fact that we're playing these Power 5 teams, even though they may not be world beaters by any means, but they're not Nicholls State. They're not. We've played Charleston Southern. We've played everybody that doesn't matter, that you don't care about in the past on these weekend series that you just really want to sell your tickets to.
Yeah.
Playing Purdue is a lot of fun, and I'm excited for it this weekend.
Yeah, it's better than Lipscomb, who we've got this weekend. Just some tune-ups before conference play begins, and opportunity to watch some younger guys get some pitches, get some at-bats, and see what you got that you're going to need as the season progresses, because there's clearly going to be a lot of deep runs. The SEC is deep this year. A lot of really good teams. Alabama's 12-0. South Carolina's playing good baseball. We'll see what happens in conference play. But the SEC is deep for sure.
Yeah, and don't look now, but the team that you finished to pick last in the SEC West.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Is undefeated.
They're
one of the two remaining undefeated teams, and they have played nobody.
Nobody.
It's just been garbage. Oh, did you see how Tennessee lost last night?
My gosh, yes.
So Tennessee is playing Boston College, another Power 5 team from the ACC. Again, you should beat the brakes off of them. Boston College is up by 1 in the, I guess this is the bottom of the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee has a runner on 3rd with no outs. Mm-hmm. Boston College brings in a 5th infielder brings an outfielder in to play a 5th infielder, and gets do the math here. You got 2 outfielders, so they get a pop out or a ground out.
Ground out, then a pop
ground out to get the first out, and then a pop out to shallow center field, which would have been a single if they don't bring those outfielders in.
Yeah.
The guy catches it, throws a horrible throw to home, but is cut by the third baseman and relayed home for the final out. And the celebration right there on Tennessee's field was what dreams are made of, my man.
Couldn't happen to a better program. Straight up church league softball vibes with that rover there by second base. It was incredible.
I remember when I was playing Little League one year, we had when you play Park League, you're playing in like July in Mississippi. And I mean, it is just a microwave out there. Yeah. And we showed up in the championship game with 7 people. So we had one guy playing the outfield, genuinely. And don't take this the wrong way. Don't hear what I'm not saying. The only black guy in the league, his name is Deontay Curley. I saw him the other day. We still know each other, still recognize each other, had a nice conversation. Boy was fast.
Yeah.
And he played center field and ranged from corner to corner. Now we're talking 5th graders here. Mm-hmm. And we had the best pitcher in the league, so it kind of made it a little easier. I caught, okay? And so about the last inning, I stumbled behind home plate because it is just that hot. And I full on just sucking wind at that point, just pouring sweat. And my coach said, no, you ain't catching no more. And so he brought we ended up bringing an infielder in to catch. So we're down 1 infielder. He put me out in right field with the bag of ice, and he said, don't you get up unless the ball's hit to you, and then you just throw it to the closest guy. And he said, throw it to Deontay. He'll get it in. And we won, and it's never hit to me. But, the hottest I've ever been, and the only time I've ever seen a 2-man outfield before.
Yeah, except for last night. A couple of other games of note. Florida struggled over the weekend, lost to Miami. It was a good team, but not the Miami of old, and Florida should not be losing that game.
But you got midweek games, like I said, against Southern Miss. It's like you're dependent on at best, your 4th best starter, which isn't necessarily your 4th best pitcher. Mm-hmm.
Florida Gulf Coast went to Florida State, took 2 out of 3. They're 12-1. There's a decent little baseball team.
Good.
The same one that Florida Gulf Coast. So was that
Dunk City?
Right. Was that the Elite 8?
Yeah, it was the Elite 8. Yeah.
I think they got to the Elite 8. Lob City, Dunk City. They got a good baseball team. There's some small teams that are going to be pretty good this year. There's been a lot of shakeup already at the top 25. Vandy's fallen. Stanford has risen. Tennessee, for some reason, has not fallen. They're still top 10, even though they're struggling at the beginning of the season. But
they're still number 3 with Ole Miss number 4. And my dad is just livid over the fact that they haven't dropped down a spot. But, there's been nothing. I mean, you lose games. It's a concentration thing. It's a monotonous thing when you're playing those no-name teams, and it's baseball. I mean, the cliche is a cliche for a reason. Weird things happen in baseball.
Yeah.
And because Tennessee loses a game to Boston College, or they lose one to whoever they play last weekend.
Small school, yeah.
Yeah, because if you lose one of those, if you win the series, you shouldn't be docked.
No, I agree, but another little small school to watch is the Campbell Camels. They're right up the road from me, up in North Carolina, Campbell, North Carolina. They're playing really good baseball. But did you see what Coastal did well, first of all, over the weekend, they won a game 26-5. Coastal Carolina, Chanticleers. They beat Wake Forest last night, who has been a real trendy pick to win the national championship this year. They're currently the 5th-ranked team. They were 13-0. CCU hit 4 home runs last night, and I think they won like 13-5 or something. Just like Wake Forest got some runs late. Wake Forest got some runs late, but CCU absolutely dominated them. And Coastal's going to be another team that's going to be pretty good this year. They play in a smaller conference, but they won a title in 2016. Beat the brakes off of Wake Forest last night in dominant fashion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have for college baseball. I do keep track with it. I know that Arkansas was in a war last night.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're getting to the good part. You know, like we talked about with the NFL season. You lead up and you get to the good part, and that's the Super Bowl, and then it drops off. With baseball, especially when you're a fan of a team that's in the SEC West and they're a good team from the SEC West, we're getting to that. This
Conference
is what you
play starts in 2 weeks, man. It's like a birthday present to me. We start Friday night. My birthday's Saturday. Conference play starts Friday night, baby.
Yeah, Ole Miss starts at Vanderbilt the weekend after our spring break, and my wife is going and taking the kids to visit her sister. And through the week, and my dad was like, "Are they going to be gone the weekend? Because if they're gone the weekend, you want to go to Nashville?" I was like, "No, that's actually the day they're coming back. Will be the day we need to go to Nashville, so I can't make it." But I said, "You know what I would do if we go to a game in Nashville? Is I will plant drug paraphernalia on the Vandy Whistler and call the cops."
I heard one of them died. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it was a hoax. It got everybody's hopes up.
I guess so. Yeah, that's kind of all I got for college baseball this year. Again, if you're not a college baseball fan and you're still listening to our podcast at this point, thank you. Second of all, pay attention because it's finna get good.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're in the doldrums. If you don't love baseball, then what are you watching right now? I mean, because I know the NBA in the South doesn't have just the biggest market, especially in Mississippi, where there's
outside of Memphis, maybe Birmingham, yeah.
And so, if you're not watching baseball right now, there's really nothing. If you're not watching college baseball right now, there's really nothing to watch. So try it.
Give it a
pick
shot.
Your team.
Yeah.
I know you're a fan of some college teams, so more than likely they're a team from the SEC.
Yeah.
Just buy in, give it a shot.
Yeah.
At the very minimum, it is something you can leave on in the background and do your chores to and be entertained in the process.
And honestly, outside of A&M and Auburn in the West, if you like a team in the West, and I mean, State's not great, but outside of A&M, Auburn, and State, if you like a team in the West, they're doing pretty good right now. Now's the time to latch on. And even if you like one of those teams, hang in there because I think State's going to get better as the year progresses. I think A&M's going to get worse. They're 7-4 right now, and they're just not a great baseball team like everybody thought.
Yeah, and college baseball is a growing sport. It's not one of those things you got to worry about being a bandwagon fan. Just jump on.
Just jump on.
Come on in. The water's fine.
That's it. A couple quick NFL notes as we close out. Did you see kind of some of the talks coming out of the NFL Combine? There's been some rumors flying around about some NFL superstars. First of all, Derek Carr did the Raiders dirty, and rightfully so. Did you see that?
Not as it pertains to the Raiders, but I know that he's a Saint now, which I believe is. Make your point, then I'll talk about it.
So my thing is, towards the end of the trading block, kind of towards the end of the season, after the season, leading up to the combine, there was talks of the Raiders trading him to the Saints. That was one of his trade destinations, and he said no. And
he has a no trade clause.
Right, but he said he would waive it, and he entertained the Saints. Came back to Raiders, said no, I'm not going to the Saints. They cut him, and then what does he do? He signs with the Saints instead of getting the Raiders 2 draft picks for him.
Well, and I could be wrong about this because I'm not really a salary cap guy when it comes to the NFL. But if you're traded, you are beholden to the contract in which you are on.
Mm-hmm.
So what Carr did is I'm sure he met with the Saints and said, what kind of extension will you give me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, instead of an extension, they couldn't work out an extension. He just said, okay, when his money became due with the Raiders, they just cut him. And then he signed a 4-year deal with only 2 years of it guaranteed. And so it was a team-friendly deal in terms of years. Now, he's going to be making a ton of money.
Listen, the Saints need it too because they are well within the luxury tax, and they've got to make some moves, or they're well within the luxury tax now.
Well, and for me and our compadres, including yourselves, Tennessee Titans fans, who seem to be always looking for a quarterback, seems like you're going to have Tannehill again. Mm-hmm. But what I told all them going into it is that if you could give me any quarterback in this draft as a Saints or in this league right now that are free agents or could be traded for, give me Aaron Rodgers 1, give me Derek Carr 2. And the reason why is because Derek Carr has the ability to do everything. Now, he's never won the big game, but he's always been on trash teams. I mean, let's be honest. He's never been the reason why they win, but rarely, and I guess I may be wrong, but it doesn't feel like he is often the reason why they lose. Solely him.
It's a bit of a reach, but
you know what he's stepping into though. What he's stepping into is.
I'll hold on. I'll make a point to go along with it. Like, yes, he had Devontae Adams, but they also had Henry Ruggs, who was supposed to be all world, and now he's in prison where he belongs and had an opportunity to really. But like Darren Wallen was hurt. He's never really had the pieces that he needed, and he's stepping into a pretty good Saints lineup. Particularly, I mean, all he's got to do is throw a slant to Michael Thomas, and Michael Thomas is just going to rack up yards running the same route every single time down the field.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what he's stepping into now, if they cut Michael Thomas tomorrow, I don't care. You know, he's a locker room cancer.
Yeah.
But what he's stepping into, and the most important part of going for Derek Carr's upside, is that you've got a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
And they were a top 10 defense last year when they scored no points, like 0 points.
I mean, your quarterback for Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and Andy Dalton.
Yeah, and probably both of them are gone now.
Yeah, and then the other big news, Aaron Rodgers being entertained by the Jets. That's kind of a bigger deal for Packers fans. He's got an opportunity to move to New York. Nothing's official yet, but that's one of the destinations that have been entertained by Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, trying to piece something together to see if that'll work out. And then my Tennessee Titans, speaking of, we cut Taylor Lewan a couple weeks ago. We cut Bud Dupree last night or this morning, clearing up cap space. And then there was rumors at the combine that Derrick Henry has been on the trading block just to see what we can get, see if there's anything, any kind of moves that we could make, who's interested. Derrick Henry, and I'll kind of give my thoughts on it real quick. Derrick Henry's 29. That's kind of the cliff that running backs fall off of. That's the time where running backs really start, getting into the twilight of their career. 29 years old is an old NFL running back. Maybe not for you or I, Uncle Buck, but that's an old NFL running back. And so I understand he's in the twilight of his career, but Derrick Henry is not normal. Derrick Henry is part predator. Derrick Henry is somebody that can completely change your franchise, completely carry a team as he has carried the Tennessee Titans the last few years. Part of me gets it. Like, again, he's in the twilight of his career. But it's Derrick Henry, and we don't have a wide receiver one. We don't have somebody a quarterback that's all world. We don't have Lamar Jackson or somebody like we have Ryan Tannehill. Like, Derrick Henry is our offense, and I understand you kick the tires, but it's Derrick Henry, man.
You have Derrick Henry in what should be the twilight of his career. We don't know what Derrick Henry's career.
That's what he's a freak, man. He's part predator. He's like a genetic wonder.
But given the obvious gaps everywhere and the seemingly willingness to shed salary, I think it's smart to at least see what's out there.
I don't
And if somebody makes you a stupid offer, then take it and hope you don't end up with a Ezekiel Elliott situation.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. Buffalo, the Chiefs, the Bears are teams that are interested in Derrick Henry, and they have some draft capital available just to maybe make a move. Again, I don't think you necessarily like push hard, but you just kind of put out feelers and say, hey, he might be available for the right price, and see what you can get.
Yeah, I typically I tend to agree with you. The only other news I'll just mention, Lamar Jackson got franchise tagged.
Kinda. He got the non-exclusive franchise tag.
Right. Basically,
still entertain.
Yeah. To put it in NBA terms, he is a restricted free agent.
Right.
You're allowed to get an offer sheet, but the Ravens have the right to match it. I think it's smart for the Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, Lamar's great, and this is not a criticism of Lamar, but what you see a lot of times when teams overpay for decent quarterbacks, or you can't put the requisite team around them. However, what the Ravens have done is they've not put anybody around him.
No, and they traded Hollywood. Like, they traded the guys they had.
So he has no weapons, and now he is going to be gone from there as soon as he can. They've not given him any weapons. They will not put their money where their mouth is on his own contract. He has openly said that he wants to get paid. He is not going to he's not going to do the, Brady thing, or where you take a little less money so you can get a few more toys to play with. He's just not going to do it. And shoot, it's his life. Make all the money you can. You're not guaranteed next year.
That's what
you're in the NFL.
I got a major beef with people who are like, oh, they're NFL fans. Or NFL players. What's another $2 million? Like, the shelf life of an NFL career is less than 5 years. So you've got 5 years to make money that has to last you forever, because it's not like they're an engineer or a PT that they can go find another job. I'm sure they can, but this is their opportunity to make generational wealth. Go get your bag, man. Absolutely get your bag.
And ask any other rich person. Yeah. You can't, as somebody who makes less than $100,000 a year, I'll just put it at that. That's pretty wide open. Probably speaks for most of our followers. If you want to make it 150, fine. But for myself, let's just say round number, less than $100,000 a year. That would be like somebody saying to me, "Who cares? That's an extra $500. Who cares?" It matters.
Yeah.
It's relative. If I'm making $20 million a year, don't you think I'd rather make 25?
Yeah.
That's $5 million.
Especially when your opportunity to make $25 million is less than 5 years.
Right. I will have to work for, 35 to 40 years.
Right.
This guy's got an opportunity in a short amount of time to make enough money for his grandkids. Yeah. And his great grandkids, if spent wisely. And
more money than you and I with our careers will make in our lifetime in a 5-year span.
Yeah. Put together and multiplied by 10, Yeah,
absolutely. So get your bag, Lamar Jackson. Real quick, your Ole Miss Rebels are fighting, man. You're up 3 with a minute to go in the second half against South Carolina.
Just hurry up and lose, so they'll hire Chris Beard.
You're up by 3.
They say they're not going to make any kind of announcement until they're out. So let's not make a run here. Let's just lose. And
y'all were up by 8, and now it's down to a 3-point lead. So we'll see.
There we go. We're trending in the right direction.
We went long tonight, man. We had a lot to cover. You got anything else you want to talk about? Any other topics, Uncle Buck?
No, I believe, like you said, we went a little long. Our draft went a little long tonight because we went down memory lane. That tends to happen. Little things sprinkled around, small topics, nothing really jumps to mind on that. Yeah. And so I'm good with hitting the brakes here and picking up where we left off next week.
Listen, if you made it this far, you have made history for the longest episode of the 2 Buck Sports Podcast. We appreciate your patronage, appreciate you sticking with us as we ramble from topic to topic tonight. As always, please 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Give us a like, share, follow on social media. Help us grow our following. If I tell you what, if you go on and you share one of our posts or your story with a comment, or you share it with a friend and tag us in it, I'll make Uncle Buck give you a shout out on next week's podcast as we try and grow our following.
You're always just going to throw me out there. When do you get some skin in the game?
Listen, you're the personality here, man. I'm throwing you out there.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but you're the guy in elementary school that says, I bet you won't go slap her on the butt.
Fine. I tell you what, you give it a share, you get to pick your host for your shout out. How about that? You pick your host. You want Uncle Buck, you want Buckets. You get to pick your host.
There you go. So, all right, Buckets. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing this again. I'm glad for all the people who come and hang out with us. We appreciate you. Check out our social medias. Interact with us. 2 Buck Sports Pod on Instagram and Twitter. 2 Buck Sports Podcast on YouTube. And we'll be back next week.
You enjoyed it, brother. We'll see you next week.
See you.